In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.
Welcome to District Divided, a DC sports podcast. But today's episode is a special one because we are talking about the one most important thing that's going on right now, the Russia-Ukraine situation. I've heard a lot of different podcasts, sports podcasts that I love, talk about, hey, we are going to provide you a distraction and stuff like that. And we tried to do that a little bit, but you know what? We were like, fuck it. This is our podcast. We can do what we want. We want to talk about it. And so that's what we're going to do today. I am Amit. That is KDot. KDot's got 11,000 followers on IG right now at KingDub21. Killing it because he's got some takes. And so we're going to begin with him. KDot, what are your thoughts on this ever evolving situation here?
Fubar.
Right.
I mean, it's just this shit, man. I know that everybody over here, there's no way to not think about it. Even when you're trying to distract yourself, it's mainly as a reason to distract yourself from this particular topic. It's just that it's on everybody's minds. I mean, shit, last week, I know that I'm fielding phone calls left and right for people that are just stressed out. Shit, even me and you, if I could throw that out there, I know that you were stressed last Thursday about everything, and we had to push back the recording for the Washington Commanders pod, but it's just shit. I mean, that's the thing, is that the way that this is not completely singular. We've seen invasions, we've seen things like this happen. We haven't seen it necessarily to the magnitude of which we're seeing right now, and especially not in a country that. So I've got to kind of be careful the way I say this, because I want to make sure that I want to make sure that people understand that this is absolutely where our mind should be focused. But I think that we need to, while we try to solve this issue, also take into account all the other times that invasions and civilian populations have been targeted in the last 40 years or however long, and do what we need to do to prevent all of that stuff from happening. But I mean, even if you look at it from just a storyline standpoint, this is the West and Russia head to head. It's got all your juicy storylines, right? World War III, that's the thing, is that we're talking about two of these empires clashing, and it's a rarity that things get this hot, right? We're all familiar with all the proxy wars that have been fought for so many years, whether it be in Afghanistan or what you even see recently with I think people forget that it wasn't that long ago that we found out that Russians or Putin's, I don't even want to say it Russian, I want to say Putin's people, Putin and his cronies, yeah. Putin and the Kremlin, they were given bounties to terrorists and Taliban to kill American servicemen. Wasn't that long ago. We kind of glossed over it because we had a president that didn't do shit about it. But we keep doing this thing where we know we're fighting with each other, but we use other countries to a certain degree to get what it is that we need to get across. And right now, I think the United States has not done anything as egregious as what Putin's doing at this particular point in time, especially when it just doesn't feel like it makes any sense. I mean, I can go and look historically to why Ukraine means so much to people with those Soviet ideals, or trying to bring back the power, the empire of what the Soviet Union used to be. I can understand it geopolitically. I can understand it just logistically from the terrain in that area and way it leads to Russia. I can understand all those things to a certain degree. The aspect that the sanctions and stuff that are happening to his own people, the fact that his soldiers as of right now are getting their asses kicked, and he's showing no signs of letting up. This feels like it's a madman. This feels akin to the stories you hear about Hitler and Genghis Khan and things along all those guys that we look at and with holy shit, they were that fucked up. Why the fuck would they do? This is what it feels like right now. It just doesn't feel like it makes sense.
So I want to ask you about that. And so real quick, if I could, just a very, very heavy Spark Notes version of what I feel is going on. And you can correct me if I'm wrong real quick. And then I have a question for you about Putin specifically. But it seems like, so 91, up until 91, late 20s to 91, it's the USSR, right? And so then it gets broken up. And, it was originally these 15 republic nations, and now Ukraine is one of those. And they want to align themselves with the West and more the, democratic style of, living. And there were a couple sort of revolutionary, I won't say wars, but moments. One in 2005, one in 2014. The one in 2014, the president at the time wanted to align himself more with the Russian ideals, and people didn't seem to like that. The Ukrainian people did not like that. He gets ousted. We're talking about maybe joining NATO at some point for Ukraine, and just again being more democratic. And it seemed like Putin did not like that, and they annexed the Crimean Peninsula, and they've been stationing troops for quite some time. So first, correct me if I'm wrong over there.
For the most part, truncated, spark most.
It's hard.
Some of the dates
right?
are a little weird. But yeah, you're fine.
The general idea.
Yeah.
So on Putin, though, do you think that this is something he was always going to do? Do you think something changed recently, like maybe during the pandemic or something like that? What is going on? Because he is, like, right now, like you said, I would say they're losing based on all reports that we're getting for the amount of power they're supposed to have, right? This is supposed to be some sort of landslide victory. You've got Ukrainians fleeing, things like that. But credit to the Ukrainian people that have stayed. They are really holding their own, in my opinion. What's going on with Putin?
Let me preface this by saying, look, I'm not a foreign policy expert. I am a foreign policy junkie, in the sense of ever since I was a little kid, it really fascinated me. Growing up in DC around all the embassies and having play dates at the fucking Roman embassy when I was a kid, like things like that has kind of shaped the way that I look at
Let me
things.
quickly preface with I'm a Nats fan. I'm a Commanders fan, stuff like that. I know nothing
Right.
about it relative.
Yeah,
to
don't take
Please
anything
continue.
that we're saying is like
At all.
some-
We are a
that-
sports podcast.
We're not
We are
huge
just talking about it.
scholars in this, right?
Right.
So I'd say my thoughts on this is, yeah, it's not a surprise that Putin would do this, right? Like, it's not, if you look in the grand scheme of history, it doesn't make, it's not that far off. I mean, we just saw what he did in Crimea a few years back, and we know what's going to happen probably in Moldova and Georgia, as much as stuff has already happened in those areas. And if you look even further back in what happened with Chechnya, I mean, Chechnya is not necessarily a one-to-one comparison, but because the way that battle, it kind of unfolded, depending on who you actually believe with the terrorist attack and stuff like that, you can get deep on that shit too. But the thing that you'd think about the Russians, or at least the opinion that I've always had about the Russians, is that they're usually fairly pragmatic. Like, you can see X is a thing that they want or they need for what it is that they want, and they're going to just go do it. Compared to a lot of America, the way that we think about things are more ideological view. And I think the ideology that we have is also comes from a place of almost privilege. And this is not me saying that this is not me trying to draw some false equivalency between Putin and the United States. I do think what Putin's doing right now is just crazy. But the thought process that where we are and who we are as far as existing as Americans, right? We live somewhere where no one's really ever going to be a threat to us as far as invasion. It won't happen. Like, are we worried about Mexico? Our pharmacy to the south that supplies us with all. Are we afraid of our Canadian neighbors up north? I don't think so. Like, we don't have to worry about that aspect of things. And you see that sometimes the sense of when things do get a little too close for comfort, our administrations do have a policy of maybe overreacting. The Cuban Missile Crisis. You even look at 9/11. I won't get into debates about what was an overreaction. I would think that everybody on this would be on the same page as saying the war in Iraq was definitely we did too much compared to what it is that happened to us. But if you look at like Russia or any of these European countries, for the most part, they're not that far from each other. And you look at history, there's a lot of conquering that has happened back and forth throughout that area over a long period of time. I mean, even though majority of the deaths were because of Stalin, conceptualize the amount of Russians that have died since World War II and beyond. I think the last estimate you gave was like 26 million people. Can we even conceptualize that? Can we?
Wow. 26 million?
Right. Like the thing that, once again, a lot of that's due to famine, like all kinds of shit. Stalin was a motherfucker, right? But you think about the amount of lives lost, and that was Germany getting this shit and start doing dumb shit, right? You look across Europe, there are some crazy fears that some of these countries have. And I think what Putin says is that if NATO gets close to us, I'm afraid of that. And I think that there's a fear that it's not necessarily grounded in anything that would actually happen. I don't think the West, under any circumstances in the 21st century, wants to invade Russia. But I think what they care about is their influence. And they have this completely intangible sense of fear behind it. The same way that, like, for the most part, for us in America, it's not the same. Once again, I know it's not the same, but it's hard to talk about these things. But the same, like, we feared terrorism to a level at which we probably didn't need to for 2 decades after 9/11. And I don't want to make that seem as though that the loss of life that day, I mean, that's a thing that's a benchmark in our lives, and it forever will be, right?
Yeah.
But what happens in the fear that you have certain governments and certain people in other places, while it's not necessarily something we can agree with, or while it might not even be something that is tangible or real even, you can understand, you can make sense of it without agreeing, if that makes sense. So in that sense, like, I can see Putin saying Ukraine is, and you look historically at what that area means to Russia, it's very important to them. I still think the Ukrainians should get to decide what it is that they want to do. But I think that right now, what we're looking at this particular point, actually bringing up what it is you said as far as the way it's looking right now, I agree. Putin's troops are getting fucked up, but you look at who these troops are, the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, the ones that are counting the ground, the ones that say that they thought they were in a training exercise and then they ended up in Ukraine. They're abandoning their tanks and all kinds of stuff. This is like, you see the photos coming out of 60-mile-long convoys of them in single file. American A-10 Warthog pilots are salivating at the opportunity to be able to shoot at a shooting galley that fucking easy. There's nothing strategically making any sense about a lot of what Russia's doing. It's just like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Where it just feels as though the military and it might not have been on the same page as Putin with this. But even with all that said, and even though you got to give the Ukrainians a lot of credit, there are a lot more troops and a lot more weapons.
Right. And so that's what that's what I was trying to say when I was like, Russia's losing. Well, they're not actually. It's really just that early, relative to what you would have expected, right? Like, Ukraine has done a magnificent job holding their line, if you will.
Yeah, and I think anything can happen the more weapons and stuff get over to Ukraine. But I still think the only thing that changes this is a coup. Really, I mean, I look at Russia and I'm saying that you can see the disinformation that's happening in Russia. They ban like Twitter and all these other websites so that they're not being able to get it. Up until a few days ago, I was watching mostly Russian state TV over the course of last week.
Right.
Because I wanted to see the narrative that they were playing up to the Russian people. And they keep playing videos or documentaries over and over again about what was happening in the Donbass region, which your people know there were 2 regions in Ukraine that Vladimir Putin has said are independent. This is based on everything that's been happening.
This is Eastern Ukraine, right?
Eastern Ukraine, very close, north of Crimea. That Russia was there, but they weren't technically there because the troops that were there didn't have any insignias.
Volunteers, right?
We've known, but they keep saying about how the Ukrainian militias in these regions are neo-Nazis and how they've been targeting civilian populations. And the way that he's framed it to the Russian people is that they're a peacekeeping force. So the Russians do not know, for the most part at large, what's happening in the Ukraine if they're following normal sources of information. It just doesn't, it's not at all being shown to them. But you can see the word is getting through. Like, there's a lot of ideas. I think that's been a priority for me telling Americans is get clever with how it is we can get the Russians to know what the fuck is going on. Even there was an idea that I got to spread a couple days ago, which is that Yelp and Google, anything in Russia that gives you the opportunity to leave a review, leave a 4-star review, say your restaurant was amazing, but it would have been better if Putin wasn't slaughtering innocent people in Ukraine. Just anything that you can do to get the word out. We need videos from the front lines and stuff out there to them. But with all that said, like, it's still weird as far as Putin not using his Air Force to the extent at which he can. Right now, it seems like he's increased the aggression. You see the amount of civilian centers that get bombed even last night from when we're recording today. If he just said, fuck it, I'm just going to go all out, there's not a lot anybody can do to stop it. And the thing is, we're kind of backed into a corner at this particular point because once again, we're talking about these proxy wars. We're able to do anything we can to help Ukraine, but not at the cost of American life, because that would mean World War III.
Right.
So
Makes
it's
sense.
this weird thing, right? Like if both sides could come to the table and say, hey, look, conventional warfare, no nukes on the table. All right, deal. Let's go. Like that's not what's going to happen. The moment that NATO gets involved and they have people on the ground, those people die. Part of the treaty is that if you attack one of us, you attack all of us. So we have to get involved. So there's this, it's really stupid. It's dumb. It feels like it's
a lot of life is. Let's be
It's
real.
like a game of tag that like somebody created the rules and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, you're not allowed to tag me. You have to go get someone else to tag me. Well, who fucking came with that rule? You're still tagging me. Like, it's just dumb shit. Like, we all know what's happening. It's just the semantics of it.
A lot of technicalities. And so I guess that's what you're suggesting here is the reason NATO hasn't gotten involved. The reason the United States has not sent troops is because the moment there's loss of life on either one of those parties, if you will, then a whole lot of more larger can of worms gets involved. You can now make the case. Well, actually, it would then be a fact that there was loss of life within an organization or country. That means that the United States needs to get involved.
Right. Which to me is, it's weird. It's fucked up to know, like, where are the morals in that? Like, if there's anything to fight for, it seems like it should be something like this. But then as America, you got to kind of turn your back and you're like, all right, well, we've invaded countries. We definitely bomb places to him. We don't necessarily need anybody to have the exact same foreign policy when it comes to us in that sense, right? Like, so.
Right. The double standard's clear.
There's a double standard. But then even with that, there's almost a guilt that then comes as far as like, it almost feels that in the equation, American lives are worth more than Ukrainians, right? Like it feels as though if you're not a member of NATO, your life just doesn't matter as much. You're in a place that doesn't count. They used to say that shit up in Baltimore is like, we hear about the murders and stuff and they don't make the news. Even in DC growing up, the murders didn't make the news. You die in a zip code, it don't matter.
Right. Do you think that's sort of the mindset of not here, not our problem? Or what do you think?
There's some of that. I mean, there's always going to be an American isolationist attitude, right? It was there in World War II. If Japan didn't bomb Pearl Harbor, there's still a very good case to make that we would never got involved, right? Even if we had heard about the atrocities that were happening in the Holocaust, even though there were rumors and all kinds of stuff at that point, we were still probably on the fence about whether or not to get involved. Hey, not our war. There's always going to be that sect of us, right? Like throughout. But then if you even look at this historically, which is what people, I think, fail to realize here, is that America, there's this like hoorah mentality with Americans. We're rebellious and we'll fight for anything. And that's why we got all these guns, blah, blah, blah. We would have got our fucking asses kicked in the American Revolution if it wasn't for the French and the Spanish. Like, if they didn't come to bail us out, like, and help and legit help.
Oh, heck, even 1812 wasn't going our way.
Oh, here, I'm not even going to get to that. I'm going to get to that in a second.
All right, fine. Go ahead.
So if you even look at the American Revolution, like, we needed help. And we try to not talk about it as much. Like, you watch the movie The Patriot, like with Mel Gibson. I know he's canceled, whatever. But you got like the one Frenchman fighting with him. Like, it's just, we can't give them that credit, right? Like, it's just not. But that's the other thing is, like, you think about it as far as the American psyche when it comes to invasion or anything. Go ask anybody what the War of 1812 was. They will not be able to fucking tell you. They won't. They won't look like Washington burned down. Hold on, what? Washington, D.C. burned? The British burned it down. They did what? They have no fucking idea. We don't like teach that narrative.
Too. It was very easy. I remember reading it and be like, what?
We don't teach that narrative. It's all about like the American independent spirit and we're rebels. We do this, we fight here, and we do that. And then you have people have the audacity to say Ukraine needs to fight for their own shit. And it's like, we didn't. like it's just, you need, like, this is, but I think all of us knew that the right decision back then was for America to be independent. I don't think any of us are second guessing that. But if it wasn't for the French and the Spanish, we'd be putting fucking U's in the word color. Like, that's just what would be, right? So I don't get it. We like, it's hard for us to look from anybody else's perspective. And if you're Ukrainian and just like, yo, fuck all that noise, I don't feel like dying today. And I don't want my country taken over. That at its core should be something that we all just understand.
Right. You can't blame him at all for choosing to flee. Like, I mean, that's fight or flight. That's a real thing. And I mean, yeah, some people, you show your true colors and maybe it's flight. I don't blame you at all. Are you kidding me? Like, and that's the thing. Like, even when we're talking about this, it's so, but there's so many different angles, right, KDot, that we could choose to take talking about this. Like, I'll even hear you go, like, you can hear the various different thoughts and angles coming in to figure out how to explain this stuff. Now you went, when talking about fleeing and not blaming them. What are your thoughts there?
There was a story about it. I think it was a comic or a dancer or something. He was at the border trying to leave. He's a Ukrainian citizen. He was trying to get the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
And people were getting on his ass on Instagram and stuff about what the fuck are you talking about? Like, people are flying into the country to fight for you. Like, you don't get to leave. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I think his explanation was, look, some of us don't want to fight wars. Some of us are peace and some of us are pacifists and this and the other. There is a sort of part of me that's like, look, I don't think Ukraine should be alone, but fuck that. You need to fight for your shit. Like, there is at least a part of that for me. Like, even if I'll probably get capped quick, but even I had a couple buddies call me 2 days ago, and we were talking on the phone for a minute, and we were discussing whether or not to go to Ukraine ourselves.
Okay.
So they're like, all right, Kadeem, we know you could shoot. Like, I'm a huge gun nut, right? So, like, we know you can shoot your ass off, but I'm like, all right, first off, if I got to go run and walk places, like, it ain't going to fucking work. I'm going to have an asthma attack. Like, I'm going to die. I don't feel like going over there to die, but I do want to help. And there's almost like,
sit in a tank.
Death from above, homie. The idea. So it's like, but then there's almost, you think about you as like an American, you think about our revolution, you think about trying to be the good guys to help out against the bad guys. And it's almost a guilt you feel that we can be here sitting and doing a fucking podcast with our expensive ass equipment in the comfort of our homes when there are people across the world getting bombed the fuck out of and they're begging for our help. Like, there's a guilt there, which is why I know I've buried myself into helping and doing everything I can from this end.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Also, if you don't have military experience or medical experience, stay the fuck out. You're just going to cost people, like, unless you got full-blown military experience, you need to go.
And you're going to use equipment and stuff like that, right?
Fucking stop. And one of the two guys is actually a Brit, and I know he's already on his way.
Wow.
But he has prior military experience. So I get it. Do your thing, homie. I hope he makes it back. But then there's also, I hear from another element of people that are basically like, man, Ukraine's on their own after seeing what was happening with the evacuations and African students and Indian and were getting stopped from being on the trains or getting stopped at the border. Now, I know there was a little more nuance in that than just pure racism, even though there was absolute racism there. There were some weird stories coming out of the border as far as like, because you had, I know it's in the UN, I know it's in the charter. I just know that when it comes to actually people getting the information, disseminating it, lines get blurred, which is that if you're a Ukrainian national, it's very easy to understand you're fleeing from Ukraine, come here, come to Poland. But if you're a Nigerian national that's living in the Ukraine, you can easily still go back home to Nigeria. Seeking asylum in Poland is a little different than seeking asylum for a Ukrainian national because you don't have a home. So it's usually handled through the embassy, even though they should just let everybody in through the gate. But just seeing the racism as far as people not letting people on the trains or kicking people off is enough where I know a lot of people just looking at that and being like, yo, they just as fucked up as they are over here or other places. I ain't even on that shit. I'm just worried about me. And part of me understands it, but I still think you need to have a little more empathy than that. And I just think that anybody that has that isolationist approach to it all needs to have more empathy. And I say that also knowing that some people come from a standpoint of looking at what's happening in Ukraine over the last few decades and seeing what they consider to be a lot of American influence or a lot of American meddling in the particular situation that brought us to this point, whether you agree with that or not.
Can you give me some examples of empathy in this situation that you would like to see?
The idea that you like, I think about the pandemic, right? And especially at certain points of the pandemic, like a lot of people were jobless.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't know what the fuck was going on. At least a lot of places had like the moratoriums on rent and all kinds of stuff. But
right.
Imagine like overnight, everything is done. Like you can't go to work because your work is not existing. You're worried about the thought of a bomb dropping on your head. That is something that I've talked to people that have lived in war zones. Is hard to ever understand or conceptualize unless you have had it happen to you. And I'm sorry, here in this country has not been something that we've had to be afraid of. Maybe during the Cold War, when we were talking about nukes and telling people to go into their deaths, trust me, you're not even going to feel it. If nuclear war happens, just fucking, there's nothing you can do. It's just over. Right. Just chill the fuck out.
Looking forward to that school drill. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just whatever, right? But if you remember how you felt during the sniper in 2002?
Yes. For those that don't know, by the way, there was a sniper in DC for around 3 weeks to a month or something like that. Yeah. And people had to look out. There were a number of shootings in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia. Please continue, KDot. Yeah, I do remember how I felt.
Do you remember the stress level? Like going to pump gas and there were sheets over everything. And people were saying, if you're going to your cars, you got to go in a zigzag pattern.
DCPS told us to zigzag.
We were all looking for white box. The paranoia that existed made almost anything impossible to do. Imagine anything you do, laying in bed, not even leaving your house, that a bomb could drop on you. Mm-hmm. Me and you talk about anxiety. We talk about stress. We talk about what it's like to have insomnia. How the fuck do you react knowing that at any given point in time, a bomb could destroy you or anyone and everyone you love?
Yeah, I mean, that's frightening. That's frightening, right? Because it would be like the equivalent of a million snipers all over. You can't see them. Right? They can hit you at any moment. Now, the pain would be different from getting shot versus being bombed, but like, that's the equivalent, right? Like, you could be in the bathroom. That's it. You could be making yourself some breakfast. That's it. Like, yeah. Please
hearing air raid sirens nonstop. Like, it's fucking terrifying. And look, it's not just the things, the people that I've talked to in bomb zones. I mean, I've talked to a few people that are over there over the last few days. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that are over there in the last few days. But even before that, if you think you live in Yemen, you live in Afghanistan, you live in Iraq, you live in all these places where you have normal people that all they want to do is take care of their, they were literally born in a place. They don't have any control of where the fuck they were born. They're trying to put food on the table and live a life for their families. And to know that you have this PTSD over a bomb could drop on you at any point in time. You can see what the United States did, last year, where they were following this guy. They thought that I think it was in Yemen. I wish I had the details memorized, but they thought that they were following the right guy. They saw him. They were following him all day. They used drones to follow him all day, and they thought they saw him put a bunch of bomb materials, like gasoline, or something in the back of his car, and they blew it up. Come to find out, there were jugs of water, and he had toys and shit for the little kids that gathered around his car. We did that. We did that. That's our country. We did that shit.
I'm going to look that up in the meanwhile. Keep talking.
It's some fucked up shit, man. Like, nobody should have to live with that fear ever. Ever. And the fact that like the cameras are on because Ukraine is a country that, I mean, Kiev is a metropolitan, it's a known world city. Like Kiev is in a place that I want to fucking visit. Like I've thought about visiting there. Like, the cameras and everything being there, like, you can see it, you can sense the fear, and the fact that the Ukrainians are just being fearless and everything they're doing, and like, fuck it, we're just going off, is insane. But you even think about like people that lived through World War II, and a lot of that generation's kind of dying out, like what it was like being in England when the bombs were falling from the Germans, and how it is you get past that point of PTSD of hearing air raid sirens and not knowing what the fuck is going to happen.
I just wanted to. So, was the guy's name Abdul Malik?
I think so. That sounds.
Al-Zanabi, Fresno. Well, of Fresno, 2018, and he was being targeted. Sounds like, and mistook for a rebel.
That might be different. We've got a lot.
We got a lot. Jesus. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying. I was just trying to find this.
No, I got a couple keywords I think I could type in and try to figure it out because I want to.
Yeah, wild. I mean, this whole thing is just put life into perspective, right? I mean, because
Zamari Amati.
Probably. I mean, I'll check after this.
His name is Zamari Amati. He was a longtime worker for a U.S. aid group. That happened in Afghanistan, just in a couple. Yeah, it was rough. And then even after it happened, we kind of denied that we had anything to do with it, or that he was a terrorist, and we refused to do this and the other. And look, I know that even talking about that shit plays into the Russian narrative, because that's what they're showing on Russian TV, is that we're not doing anything different than what our Western countries have done. It is a little different, Vlad, Putin, Mr. Putin. Like, we're not, what he's doing as far as what it looks like indiscriminately bombing population centers, the way that he's doing with the type of ordinance that he's doing.
Oh my God.
No,
Some
you've
of
elevated
those
the game.
social media posts where they're just bombing apartments. It's insane. Yeah.
Right. For doing forced conscriptions. Well, conscriptions are forced, of 18 to 19 to 20-year-olds, and throwing them out there with no real military plan. Just here, meat, just basically meat to slaughter, right? Like, it's just, fuck, man. Like, you're taking it a little too, you're taking it on another angle. Then, not to mention that regardless of what the sanctions that are being brought down on his people, that they're gonna hurt. Shit, we're all gonna hurt around the world on it. But there's no compassion, it seems like, there for him. He's got the one track mind as far as what it is that he wants to accomplish. And it doesn't feel as though that has anything, there's nothing to reason there. You can't reason with that. Even anything that they agree to as far as a ceasefire or anything feels extremely temporary until Putin just finds another reason to do whatever he wants to do. He's outright lying the entire time he's doing everything he's doing. And he's trying to keep the media quiet about what it is he's doing. It is different than what it is that anything that we've done. And trust me, we've not been innocent at all around the world, but it's different.
Yeah, no, I just, maybe this is a bad take. I don't know. Even those like in the Russian army that are dying right now that maybe didn't agree with it. Maybe they do. I don't know. But like, it just sucks, right? Like, even, we're celebrating Russian death. Basically, a lot of social media is like, hey, Ukraine's being held, and so the X number of Russians are dying, and it's like, well, it's not like they made the call. They're doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, that's been the biggest thing that I've seen with the Ukrainian military, is the way that they're talking about the Russian troops has been amazing.
Really, what have you seen there?
They know. They're like, look, you've come to this land, so as long as you're here and you're in a fighting posture, our plan is to fucking kill you. But if you're here and you realize that this is not what you're supposed to do, lay down your arms. You do not have to do this. They're offering, it was something that I was begging for from the very beginning of this thing, which is that a lot of these Russian troops don't have a lot of money. As a matter of fact, there was something that it was hard to confirm it, but I did, at least some military people that I know that I do trust on social media, they were showing that some of the troops had basically a phone that had an app like DoorDash, and they were getting paid per thing that they were doing. Like, if you blow up a tank, you get X amount of dollars. If you do this, you get X amount.
Oh, geez, it was like, turned into a GTA mission. Yeah, okay.
Pretty much, right? Like, if that's true, holy shit! Like, we've door dashed war.
Yep.
I mean, shit, private military contractors, but that's a story for another day.
Right.
What the Ukrainians have basically been saying is like, look, if you come here, stop your tanks, hand over the tanks and weapons to us, we'll give you 50,000 rubles and safe passage back to Russia so you can go be with your families. That to me is something that, trust me, Putin's doing everything he possibly can to keep that keep that away from his Russian troops. But that needs to be something that gets done and gets said, is like, hey, yeah, if you come here fighting a war against your brothers and sisters, your cousins here in the Ukraine that we know you don't want to fight for, put down your fucking gun. Here's the cash we'll give you. Come chill out in the Ukraine for a little bit. Hopefully enough of you fucking cross-eyed so that Putin realizes he can't do this shit no more. And then you guys go back home. Fucking all is what it is. We understand you didn't want to do it. But beyond that, if you're over there and you're in a fighting posture, it's rules of the game, man. Like, you're at war. But
right.
That's the thing, is like, a lot of Russians just don't even have the information. And the thing is, like, you think about in this country how all of our different media outlets is splintered and have this misinformation, disinformation, and how we do everything for profit here. How journalism and the news are all fucked up and nobody really knows what they're hearing is truth. Imagine everything and all things that you're hearing spin one narrative in this country. How hard is it to break that to believe something else?
Right.
It's hard. And you can see it in a lot of the protests that happen in Russia, that word is getting through. But you're also talking about a country where they're known to fuck you up if you're a protester. They like you could lose your life, and they know that they got to take this risk for information that they're not getting firsthand. Like, it's a lot, but I think that that's really the only way that this changes.
I just want to hit on that moment because just to add a DC sports spin to it, Alex Ovechkin was asked about this stuff a lot the other day, and
rightfully so.
Rightfully so, because he has supported Putin in the past, stuff like that. I can't help but wonder if something changed, though, if he's worried about family, stuff like that, because those are tricky questions to answer if you're Alex. I mean, I don't care how big of a person you are, like, there are connections, and there, to me, would be reason to be worried for my family's safety if I'm Alex, depending on what I say. I think it's a tricky area, is just all I wanted to say there.
It is. Like, I don't know what the dynamic is. Like, we know with somebody who is as high profile as Alexander Ovechkin is on the worldwide stage, knowing that he has pictures of him shaking Putin's hand, and he's on the record talking about how big a fan and how he loves to be one of Putin's friends. I mean, you go that hard in the paint defending the dude,
which is why I understand him being open to criticism.
Right. I love him to be more forceful, but yeah, you're right. I don't know. Has he earned the benefit of doubt? Probably not, just because of how buddy he has been with Putin. So I understand the criticism when you got people saying that they should basically prevent him from playing and things like that. I'm willing to hear the argument, but I don't know, because I mean, you talked to me even a few weeks ago. I don't like the way Russia just acts on the national stage. I think that they shouldn't have been allowed to perform at the Olympics. There's so many things.
Yeah, I think just to be clear, I think in Ovechkin's mind, I can't possibly speak for him, but if I were to guess, when he said no war, I think he meant that. Let's start there, because I think as an athlete, all you're focused on is being the best you can be. And he can actually get the all-time goal record. I think that's all he cares about at this stage of his career, of his life, is just like, hey, I got a wife, I got kids, I've got this goal record, I've got the Caps. I think that's literally his entire
probably, but I'm sorry, Ovechkin is worldwide. He's cultured enough.
Yes, he is.
And he has information he has access to that's not Russian state sponsored. If he still, over all these years, have been in Putin's corner the way he has been, then yeah, you need to have criticism for it, or you're going to catch some shit. And if that means that he's protecting his family over there in Russia,
sure,
cool, and I respect it, but I don't have any way of verifying that. All I know is that you've been buddy right with him, and right now it feels as though you haven't rebuked him enough. So you're going to be in that territory for it.
Yeah, I think he's probably aware of that too.
Yeah.
Just to say that, hey, we can't rule it out. Maybe he is doing it out of protection for his family. I understand the criticism going his way. I'm choosing to maybe look at it more from the protective lens. But yeah, the other thing I wanted to hit on, because you brought up a really good point, right? All the disinformation that's occurring, in the East, we'll say, in Russia, but like, truth is truth over there. Whatever they choose to give you is your truth. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, you have Fox News, you have CNN, you have MSNBC, you have BBC, you have all these different outlets spewing all different types of spin, different degrees of spin in various directions. Truth is choice over here. You could choose what your truth is.
That's bullshit. I'm pushing back on that.
No, but it's something that happens. KDot. I'm not saying that that's correct. I'm saying that's what happens, right? Would you disagree with that? Because that is literally what we see. You see it on social media all the time.
Look,
people are living by their own truth.
I understand what you're saying. I fucking hate it, and there's no chance I can let it stand.
I'm not saying I agree with
it. I just have to push back on the level of which it's not truth. There's no your version of truth, or, hey, I want this version. No, fuck that shit. You can get force-fed lies and bullshit to satiate the way you feel and hit you on an emotional level that makes you want to win whatever argument you want to have. The truth is the fucking truth. And I get it. All sides over here in this country, as long as we have a for-profit model when it comes to journalism and the things that we do, and it's turned more into entertainment than it is news, then we're constantly going to have to deal with this bullshit. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. But the truth is the truth. And up here in America, what I do not have any patience for anymore is there are ways to verify how biased certain news organizations are, and there are ways to verify people's sources, and there's ways to verify what it is you're getting is the actual truth. There are tests that you can take to look at what media outlets you have. We have entirely way too many resources here and actual good journalism here for anyone to continue to be bullshitted by the dumb shit that's going on. We need to hold people to a higher standard.
Absolutely, including ourselves, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the truth is the truth. I would agree with that. However, if you hold on to that belief, that's how you get into arguments. That's how you push away from each other. That's where you don't reach across the aisle. That's what I'm talking about. So when we're talking about a discourse to better ourselves and eventually get to maybe our version of the truth, it is important to recognize that the definition of truth has changed for some, right? To be choice. And so that's sort of what I'm trying to say right now is, yes, the truth is the truth. I understand that. I feel I understand that. This is what happened. That's it. X is what happened. That is the truth of the matter. Even if no one was there, right? That tree was chopped down. That's the truth. But based on what you're told, things can change for you. And so it's important to just acknowledge, right, when you're having conversations with people that, hey, something probably changed for you, understand where that's coming from, and then come to that compromise or agreement of like, hey, but this is actually what happened based on X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more confrontational in that sense, but not about people's takes. Like, I don't give a fuck what your take is. When I hear you say certain things, I'm at, where'd you learn that from? And they'll tell me their source, and I'm like, all right, you do realize you shouldn't use that as a source. And both left and right. You shouldn't use that as a source. And they're like, well, why? Well, this person's owned by that company's owned by that company that gives this money to these politicians. You can't really trust what you're hearing right there.
Yeah.
Okay. There are certain ways in which you can verify where the fuck it is you're getting the information from, and we need to all do better about it. There are really, really, really good news. There's a lot of great fucking journalists.
Chart. That would actually be a great chart. By the way.
I'll send you the link to the test. I'll send you the link to a test that I take every few months to make sure that I'm keeping a good split between left and right bias as far as opinion shit, and also looking. Yeah, I'll send a link, and also just how accurate your sources are. Or some organizations do it a lot better than fucking others. It's just what it is, right? And the way that I can do a whole podcast in the way that just capitalism's kind of fucked up everything for us recently, even though it's the best way to do things. Whatever. On the Ukraine front and on the Russian disinformation aspect, I get at least big picture what you're saying as far as people have the choice of different outlets that they can get to. In Russia, it's usually accept anything you're hearing or you keep silent and you keep quiet because there's not really a whole lot of alternatives. There is one alternative news source in Russia. I forget the name. I should have it. But they usually offer up a pretty good explanation of what's happening. I know that they have some reporters that are there in the Ukraine right now. They've been doing a pretty good job. I wish I could remember the name of the network. It starts with a B. But and there are a lot of great journalists over there right now. I mean, a lot of people have problems with the domestic stuff, but Vice is a great outlet as far as international news.
I do really like Vice. Yeah.
Yeah. Just keeping them away from fucking like social shit in this country, or they just goddamn just a bunch of
Vice
fucking
International
hipsters.
You like?
Yes, they have some amazing journalists, and what you can do is when you see a story on a network, see how it is that they push the journalists. And then fuck the network. There's social media now. You can go directly to the journalists that you know are doing a good job on the ground. That's what I'm a fan of doing, is making sure that the journalists that I know are out there doing an amazing job are the ones that I follow. So like I look at Hind Hassan, who's a journalist that works for, that she does a lot of stuff for Vice, but I think she's more freelance. No, I think she does work for Vice right now. She, to me, over the years, has been the best reporter in Afghanistan. She's done an amazing job as far as Ukraine, even a month ago, where she was in Donbass and she went to the funeral of one of the Ukrainian-backed paramilitary groups or Ukrainian defense troops funerals, and was talking to them on the ground about what was happening way before or weeks before any invasion happened. Like there are certain journalists you could follow to actually understand what the fuck is happening on the ground, and not hearing it through a talking head on a TV, getting information secondhand from somebody else who's being told from way up high, focus on that, don't focus on that. There's a lot of bullshit there, but there's a lot of really good journalism that's happening there in the Ukraine. And my suggestion is look for the guys on the ground. Look for the guys on the ground through social media. Spread the shit from the videos that don't need they don't need your commentary. When I see a bomb explode And I look at that bomb and I'm like, oh shit. I see where the bomb exploded.
There's an example of truth. Just to be clear,
It's what happened, right? So like, I don't need that. I can listen to Tucker Carlson try to spin me on why this bomb dropped the way that motherfucker. I saw a bomb drop next to an apartment building. It hit an apartment building. That's not okay. That's all I need to know.
Yeah. That's fair. So think for yourself. I mean, you're also arguing that as well. What did you see?
I am like,
what do you think?
Joe Rogan that doesn't say the N-word. Like, that's what I'm arguing for. And is good with vaccines. Like, that's what I like. Be a free thinker, but being a free thinker does not give you an excuse to be a fucking moron. And I think that that's what a lot of people are, that they latch on the shit that's outside of what they say is the normal narrative. They hold on to it and they think that that's what makes them a free thinker. Fuck you. It's not. It makes you kind of stupid. You just latched on the first thing that somebody else, it's just counterculture and you're being an asshole. Stop being an asshole.
I mean, fair enough. I would agree with that. Let's wrap this up. Any final thoughts on this? Anything we talked about? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would just look, this thing could get a whole lot worse before it's going to get better. It looks like the campaigns, the missiles and the bombings have just gotten worse progressively. I think it took a bit of a lull 2 nights ago, but even last night, you look at like the thermobaric bombs that they possibly dropped is a game changer, and we're looking at war crimes now. If you're watching this, and I'm sure you're probably in the Washington, D.C. area, unless you're Chilean and you love our Samus Reyes stuff.
Right.
Or you're a rugby fan in New Zealand.
Or any LC fan that's Argentinian. Anyway, go ahead.
I'd say the first thing that we have to do over here in America is to make sure that we have empathy for the people over there. And knowing that what it is we think as far as isolationism, and it's just their problem and not our problem, is bullshit, because we wouldn't be the country we are without other countries' help. Other than that, I would say that the best way to combat what's happening over there, if you're over here and you feel guilty about is there are a lot of organizations that you can donate to. There are a lot of organizations you get in contact with. I know that I've been working with Voices of Children and Maltese International. Maltese International, I think is what it's called. I'll try to send Amit all these so he can put links in the bio.
I'll throw it in the right. Yeah.
But there are a lot of organizations, United Help Ukraine. There are a lot of organizations, some of which I've been actually working with personally, that have a wonderful infrastructure and are doing what they can to help displaced refugees get fed, things like that. Jose Andres, world-renowned chef, big guy in the DC area. He's been doing amazing stuff over there as well. If you go follow him on social media, he has some links and stuff that you can do to try to help. I'd also say that what we've been talking about a good portion of this episode is misinformation and disinformation. You have to do your part to stop that shit. Quick sidebar, there was a report that just came out about there were 2 journalists. They were like doctors, this, that, and the other, had these long itineraries, and they had pictures on Facebook and Instagram. Come to find out, the pictures were fake. They were created by artificial intelligence website that creates faces. The backgrounds were fake. It was in a Russian farm. They had these guys made up their background so they could talk about their takes on what was happening in the Ukraine and be looked upon as though they were some sort of authority. Check your sources. If you're listening to me or Amit on the Dish Divided podcast for actual insight of what the fuck is happening to Ukraine, let us just be your baby step to finding out your own info. Don't take anything we said for fucking granted. I'm a college dropout that lives in my parents' basement. Don't fucking listen to me. All right? Don't fucking listen to me. All I would ask you to do is like take what it is I'm saying and apply it the way that you want to, I guess. Just do it in a way in which you can have empathy. What I'm speaking about are universal truths, not too much of opinion. You might disagree with what it is I think about who's responsible for what at this point in time. But all I know is that we are all under the same agreement. The people should dying that don't need to be. And we need to do whatever it is we can to stop this. The disinformation and misinformation is something you have to check. If you're seeing something online that somebody's posting and it's not verifiable, call them out on it. Where are their sources on this information? Let's find it out. Let's make sure that the things that are in our social media space that people are consuming are grounded in reality.
Love it. I mean, I don't really have anything else to add to that. So we'll drop the links in the comment. Well, not even in the comments, in the bio of this and, intro body paragraph for the description. That's the word. I was really trying to get there. The description of this video. And so if you want to help, you can certainly do that. The only other thing I'd say is, hey, this provides perspective for all of us. We do a DC sports show. Like, we are lucky and privileged to be able to do that. And we wanted to bring this to you guys to let you know that, hey, we think about it too. And if you do too, I mean, it makes total sense. This is one of the biggest events that may ever happen in your life. It could get worse. Like KDot said, who knows? No one knows, right? We're all just trying to figure it out. But this is a good opportunity to just know that people are going through stuff that you may not know about, right? You may see us as DC sports talking heads and stuff like that. We think about it too. Maybe the person next to you is thinking about it. Maybe the person's having a bad day. Just remember that everyone's going through something, and just be kind to one another. It really starts there. Anyway, so this was District Divided, DC Sports Podcast. KDot, you had one last thing to say?
The act of choosing of whether or not to be informed on a particular subject is privilege. Check your privilege.
Yes. Please stay informed. Yeah, to KDot's point. Okay. So District Divided, DC Sports Podcast. I'm Amit. Once again, that is KDot. And KDot, thank you so much for all the information, all the talk right here in conversation. I really appreciate it and enjoyed it. And hey, if we get positive feedback, we'll do it again. If we get negative feedback, fuck you. We'll probably do it again. Anyway, we'll have a good time, and we will see you Friday. We're going to be talking about Jason Wright and his roles and responsibilities at the Washington Commanders, and maybe even a little bit of combine talk. By that time, the quarterbacks would have worked out over there. Until then, take it easy. Enjoy.
Regime change for Putin and Snyder.